Three questions.
It's interesting when you say hello again, because clearly you've been in the chair, but your energy is different enough that you are completely new to us.
That's good. I'm progressing. So, one big bump along the way. I know enough that from your teachings that my best friend had passed away last year, or Croak, as you lovingly say. That he's fine. I picture him sitting up on top of the Big Dipper and looking down and enjoying life. But we were best friends for many years, and all of a sudden one day he was gone. He never said goodbye. So I just
Eternal beings never do.
yeah. But
It's just the point.
yeah, I guess. But I guess that was the kind of the shock to the system, and I don't. It's been kind of nagging at me. I don't
Well,
understand.
what the shock to the system is, you see, here's what the shock is. When someone you love, as you say, is gone, you feel like you're missing them. But what you're really missing is your alignment that you associate with them being there.
There's lots of alignment there.
So what we're wanting you to realize is that your alignment is not dependent upon anybody else being there.
True.
And when you get that, you got that. When you get that, then you are really finally and only free. Because as long as your happiness feels like it depends on somebody else doing anything, you're not really free. So we've been saying to a lot of people, you don't miss your dead lover, you don't miss your dead friend, you don't miss your dead mother. You miss your alignment, and you're associating it with them. Because your dog goes or dies or whatever. No death, croaks. And the sadness that you feel, you associate with the absence of your dog. But really, it's the absence of your alignment that your dog helped you to achieve. You see what we're getting at? So that's why we really want you to understand that the hello comes over and over and over and over again. In other words, goodbye. Esther said to her father when he made his transition, took her a while to find him because she was sad and out of the vortex and not where he was vibrationally. So finally, she worked herself back into alignment, and one night, laying in bed, she had a long and satisfying chat with him. And then the next night, and then the next night, and then the next night, and then she ran out of things to say. Really. But she didn't want to let him go. And he was sort of teasing her, saying, well, we all have things to do, which was something that he used to say a lot. We all have things to do. So, in other words, let's just get on with it. And Esther said, but Daddy, I don't want to say goodbye. She could feel him sort of not being there. Because she could feel that there was something wrong with trying to hold him, and yet it didn't feel good in letting him go. And she said, I don't want to say goodbye. And he said, well, then let's just keep saying hello. But only when we have something to say. In other words, not in this needy, oh, now I've got you, I'm not letting you go again, because off you went again, you see. Sort of get that?
It still doesn't answer my question.
What is your question?
Why at 55? My happiness wasn't dependent on my best friend. There was lots of happiness. There was lots of joy. We had great times together, but all of a sudden, to have it, that was the shock. Like, I can understand. He'd always say, we're going to be doing this in our 80s, and all of a sudden, boom.
Well, here's the reason. Because so many people are making their transition only as a last-ditch thing. And here's what we mean by this. Most people stop reaching for alignment, stop being the connected beings that they really are almost as soon as they are born. Stay with us. This will make sense in just a minute here. Most people come into physical experience as pure positive energy, and then that alignment begins eroding as they find things to fuss and worry about. And so, as we were talking with a friend earlier, they have resistance that they don't know they have, so they don't do anything about it, and then they have more resistance and they don't do anything about it, until before long, they are still in physical form, but they are a mere shadow of who they really are. And then, the way most people leave this physical experience is they just pinch off their well-being chronically enough and steadily enough that they finally get uncomfortable enough that then, when they leave, their friends don't say, "Oh, what a surprise." They say, "Well, it was expected." They say, "Well, it wasn't a shock," or something awful. They say, "It was really a blessing." And we say, some of you as teachers come forth to say, "When I'm ready to go, I'm ready to go." In other words, you don't have to pinch the life out of your body through resistance. Sometimes, you see, the death experience has been misunderstood by almost all humans. When you really don't like someone, you give them the death penalty. Imagine that, death and penalty, used in the same sentence, meaning the same thing. The ultimate punishment that we can give you is death. We say, really, it'd be much meaner to just keep them alive and make them watch television. But so you associate death with something not wanted, and you start warning each other early, "Watch out, that could kill you. Watch out, that could kill you. Watch out, that could kill you." Not understanding that the death experience is the ultimate reemerging into non-physical, that it's the ultimate closing of the gap, that it's the ultimate allowing myself to be all that I have become through all that I've lived now, you see. And so when you realize that what it really is, and then you start thinking about what components are present when people have their death experience. So sometimes, as with anything, Jerry and Esther were commenting the other day that they rarely hear something that they used to hear a lot, and that was, "He died peacefully in his sleep." You just almost never hear that anymore. And yet, it really is what they're planning. In other words, an occasional car nearly runs over the two of them, But what they are really intending is just all creation is the same thing. In other words, you focus upon who you are, who you've become, achieve vibrational alignment with it, and become a vibrational match to it. And so why should your death experience be anything other than that? And yet, when people die, almost all people say something has gone wrong in this death experience, especially if it happens earlier than they want it. So then what commonly happens is people don't allow themselves to reemerge into non-physical because they've got this contradictive vibration going on. In other words, sometimes they're finished with life, they're not reaching for more, but they are not ready to die either because they have beliefs that say, "I'm not ready," or "I haven't struggled enough," or "I haven't suffered enough." And so a lot of people associate when it is a common thing for someone to sit in the chair talking about someone who has died, and they want to know what went wrong, because death they see as an extension of resistance. And we have sort of been helpers along that line of thought when we say, if you've got resistance and you don't notice it, don't worry, it will get bigger. And if you still don't notice it, don't worry, it will get bigger. And if you don't notice it, don't worry, it will get bigger until eventually a truck will run over you or something will take you out. In other words, because those kinds of death experiences are often evidence of resistance. There was strong wanting, but strong resistance that erupted in that being the most next logical step. But there are many who reemerge into non-physical, not because they are in a state of resistance, but because that is where they are setting their intention, and reemerging into the non-physical is the path of least resistance. In other words, it's the place that they want to be. In the same way that someone might be setting the goal for a raise or an improved empire or an improved bodily condition, there are many who reach the place where they want enlightenment and they want to catch up with who they are, and they're no longer enlivened by what's going on in this physical experience. But in either case, in other words, your friend reemerged into non-physical because there was powerful desire and plenty of resistance. In other words, that was what was going on there. We just don't want you to assume that that's always what's going on in the death experience. And we never want you to assume that the death experience is anything other than the blissful reemerging and combining and closing the gap with who you really are. You just have to soften this subject, because every one of you and every one of you that every one of you knows is going to have that closing of the gap, reemerging in a non-physical experience. It's what you came in knowing would happen, because you came into this life experience for the benefit of the focus that it provides for you. So one of two things happens. Either it no longer provides focus, which causes you to expand, or there's so much that it causes you to expand to that you don't let yourself go, or the third option is what we're always encouraging. You reach the place where that is what you intend. In other words, how nice it is to say one day, this life has been so satisfying to me, and there is nothing about it now that is really ringing my bells. I have sifted through it, and I have discovered it, and I have found what I wanted from it, and now I'm ready to reemerge and become the full being that I am, and really get up to speed with all that this life has brought me, and then I will have another experience. What a wonderful way to reemerge into non-physical. And then just put yourself in your bed with a smile on your face, acknowledging the perfection of your life and the wholeness of who you are, and then just reemerge into the wholeness of that which you are. Esther has no fear of death whatsoever, because she lives it every time she comes and allows Abraham to pour through her in this way. She completely reemerges into the wholeness of all that she is, her inner being and all who are gathered there. And we promise you, in the death experience, you don't have a moment of lapse of awareness of who you are. You don't have any sense of loss or lack. It's that you just become this super consciousness that is you, more alive, more in love, more worthy, more knowing of who you are, more in the vortex, you see. So sometimes good friends please themselves with that experience at inopportune seeming times in order to evoke questions from those they love that will allow them longer, more delicious life experience in their physical bodies.
So when they pass, it's very possible that they are still helping us, aiding us?
For sure. Oh, for sure.
They're
in your vortex, but in order for you to be aware of them, you've got to be in the vortex. So you know how you'll be moving along and something will occur to you that your friend always said.
Right.
That's him.
Yeah. I see his car all the time.
It often comes in musical phrases.
Yeah. Another friend is experiencing that same thing.
So there is no death. And there need be no separation. But here's the big thing we want to lay on you.
Okay.
When it feels like there is a separation, it's not because they are the dearly departed. It's because you are. You are vibrationally departed from the vortex, where who you really are is, and where all that they now are is.
It feels that way. Another question. This is, it actually just came to me this morning. I had an experience that my wife seems to have fairly regularly, where there's a little being. She describes it as a cherub that comes in circles. And the other night, for the first time in my life, I was asleep and this little being put its hand on my face. I was like, so what? Can you explain that?
You're insane.
Okay, well, that's a given. Everybody that knows me knows that's true.
Well, you know by the way it feels that it is a confirmation. You felt the love of it. And in fact, the way you transcribed it or translated it, as Esther is speaking our words, we're not whispering them to her and she is repeating them to you. She's receiving the essence of what we know, and she is finding the word equivalent. It's like a block of thought coming vibrationally. So you're having that experience too. The block of thought comes. Esther is translating verbally here, but it is not uncommon at all for you to translate visually. And that's what visions are. It's receiving a block of thought. So, for example, people say, well, why Abraham? Why is the label or name Abraham? Well, we were not giving Esther the word Abraham. We were giving Esther the vibrational essence of Abraham. We were presenting ourselves as we are. We have been around for a long time, and we are the basis of all that you know as religion. And we are active in everything that you know as religion and beyond. And so even though Esther was not religiously oriented and really did not know the historical thing that surrounded the one known as Abraham, still that label was the best label that was descriptive of the block of thought that she was receiving as we were presenting ourselves to her in those early days.